Gwen Keys Fleming, as you read what the judge said about this report, it seems to indicate as clearly as it possibly could that on Thursday we may well be reading some basic elements of why the grand jury believes there should be indictments.
Well, I think that's yet to be seen. An introduction and conclusion, usually in these reports, certainly the intro gives you the background as to how the special grand jury came to be impaneled. It may include a summary of an aggregate of the witnesses that they heard from, the process, the number of times that they met. And usually the conclusion is going to be filled with thank yous, whether it's the court staff, the judge, the grand jurors for their time. And so it's going to be interesting what is released, and we will see whether it does actually give us a view as to what to expect. I think what I took from it is there are at least 8 sections to this report. So there are several categories, if you will, that we will be able to ultimately see, perhaps not on Thursday, but hopefully at some point in the future. So this is going to be a very detailed report, and the DA is no doubt looking at it very closely and examining what, if any, charges she and her team would be able to support.
Andrew Weissmann, what did you read between or in the lines of the judge's decision today?
Well, I agree. It's definitely useful to be cautious in terms of what we might get on Thursday. The judge went out of his way to say that he agreed with Fani Willis's concerns about due process, meaning not naming names. If you're not being charged, you shouldn't be disparaged in a report. And that seemed to be the guiding principle. So I find it very unlikely that in the 3 sections that are being released on Thursday that we're going to see names. That being said, the area where I think I would sort of lean in terms of what you might expect is, for a grand jury that's talking about concerns about witnesses who came in and lied, that to me suggests that there really is going to be some details about what they were witnessing, even though there are no names. And it does suggest to me that it would be unlikely that they did not recommend some sort of charges against some people. I mean, they clearly weren't saying, I don't see any crimes here at all, because I don't think if that was the case that you would be seeing that kind of chapter here. But again, I do think, it remains to be seen exactly how much we get on Thursday.
Gwen Keys Fleming, as a former district attorney yourself, it's quite striking to me that District Attorney Fani Willis said, and she was in court opposing the release of any part of this report, but today she said she fully supports the judge's decision to release as much as the judge has decided to release. What do you think that tells us? The fact that District Attorney Willis supports this release, what might that tell us about what we will be seeing on Thursday?
Well, again, I think DA Willis and her team, their main focus right now is protecting the integrity of their case. They want to be able to pursue whatever charges they decide are appropriate, if there are any. They're going to try to seek convictions, obviously, and if that happens, they want to ensure that those convictions stand up in court. And one of the reasons, or one of the ways that she can help ensure that at this early stage, is to protect the due process rights of any possible named defendants. That's sort of the dual hat that every prosecutor wears. Obviously, they are interested in pursuing justice, but they also have to make sure that any judicial decisions or jury decisions withstand the constitutional provisions.
Andrew Weissmann, in your experience with grand juries, how unusual is it for a grand jury to feel like they really want to make a statement about what they believe was lying to the grand jury, and it sounds like lying to the grand jury by more than one person?
Well, you have to remember this is a very unusual proceeding. It's not at all typical in the federal system. You don't have a special grand jury that just investigates and issues reports and doesn't have the power to indict. So this doesn't really have an analog in the federal system. The normal federal grand jury has a sort of put up or shut up role, meaning they either bring charges and find that there's probable cause or nothing is said whatsoever. This is this unusual sort of hybrid where they can bring witnesses in. And then there also is what I think of as a real grand jury that you can present evidence and there can be charges if they find probable cause. So this is, unusual in terms of what's happening, but I would think in terms of a grand jury that's impaneled precisely to issue a report, I think it's totally appropriate that if they see this kind of obstructive behavior that they outline it. It wouldn't be unusual. We all have seen that. Obviously, I worked on the special counsel investigation. We detailed numerous instances of what we considered to be evidence of obstruction. So it wouldn't be unusual for them to see this. And I think it would be heartening for ordinary civilians to be giving their take on what they saw.